A mysterious glowing monster appears in the town. Overnight, the deceased in the town have actually come back to life, although they look no different from ordinary people. But the resurrected have extremely terrifying recovery abilities. What kind of truth is hidden behind all this? Time goes back to more than a month ago. An internet celebrity was live streaming the cremation of a corpse in front of the incinerator. However, at this moment, she suddenly heard a strange sound. The internet celebrity and the staff were horrified to find that the sound was coming from the incinerator. The staff hurriedly turned off the machine. However, before the two could react, the other bodies that hadn't had time to be sent into the incinerator also underwent mutations and all came back to life. At the same time, in the town's cemetery, the buried deceased also climbed out of them. Such bizarre things caused panic among countless people. Soon, the news of the resurrection of the deceased in the town quickly spread around the world, causing a huge sensation. Later, people found that this bizarre phenomenon seemed to be confined only to the vicinity of the town, which made them breathe a little easier. After that, the local government designated December 18th as Resurrection Day. According to statistics, a total of 47 people came back to life that day. Investigations revealed that the resurrected looked no different from ordinary people, excluding the fact that they had come back from the dead. However, it was precisely this bizarre point that no expert could provide a reasonable explanation for. Now, 35 days of strict period have passed since that night. The mayor concluded that these people wouldn't pose any harm to the town, so he decided to lift the blockade. But due to control measures, both town residents and survivors were unable to leave the town. That night, in front of a bar in the town, a female police officer named Dana was preparing to go to a hotel with a man named Rami, whom she had just met, for a deeper conversation, when she suddenly received an emergency mission call. Dana dropped the man off and hurried to the mission site. It wasn't long before Dana arrived at the mission site. A short while earlier, someone called the police saying that a horse had been attacked by an unknown creature and died by the roadside. After Dana's careful inspection, she confirmed that the horse had not died at the hands of a wild beast. The wound looked somewhat like it was left by a human. However, Dana didn't dare to make a hasty judgment. Then Dana checked other parts of the scene, but found some structures very similar to human teeth nearby. This made Dana more suspicious that some pervert had directly bitten the horse to death. Such trivial matters made Dana feel bored. Everyone else in the police station was busy investigating the resurrected, while she alone was busy with such trivial things all day. Watching the people coming to the police station for help, but having nothing to do with Dana, made her feel even more frustrated. Just then, Dana's father, who was also the police chief, introduced an expert sent by the higher authorities to everyone. This person had come to help them investigate cases related to the resurrected. After seeing the person's appearance, Dana couldn't help but freeze, because this guy was Rami, the man she had met at the bar the night before. The two met again in such a formal setting, so both felt awkward. Dana's father, relying on years of experience, saw that the two seemed to know each other, but Dana didn't want her father to know about this kind of thing, and Rami was also very tacit. Under the two's prevarication, the chief stopped questioning. Rami's appearance made Dana even more agitated inside. The entire police station was busy with matters related to the resurrected, while she could only investigate the cause of death of a horse. This feeling of being looked down upon made Dana very dissatisfied. Just then, the forensic doctor in charge of the autopsy brought her an astonishing piece of news. The horse's body had actually disappeared. This abnormal situation aroused Dana's suspicion. Obviously, someone wanted to hide something. Dana realized that the case wasn't that simple. Then she remembered the teeth she had found earlier. Dana found Rami and asked him to help test the teeth. It wasn't long before Rami had results. These teeth were indeed human, and all grew in the same position of the same person. Under normal circumstances, a person only replaces their teeth once in a lifetime. But now, so many teeth had actually all grown in the same position of the same person. Theoretically speaking, it's impossible, but there is a special situation now. Then Rami showed Dana a piece of skin taken from a resurrected person.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Rami claimed that the cell activity of the resurrected is hundreds of times that of ordinary people. Therefore, these fallen teeth are most likely related to the resurrected. Upon hearing this conclusion, Dana became excited. At this moment, countless speculations had flashed through her mind. The most terrifying one was that those resurrected, like zombies in movies, possessed beast-like strength and were extremely aggressive. Dana also thought that the government's policy on the resurrected was very lenient, and even many resurrected people had been hiding without reporting. Dana was worried that these resurrected people would cause irreversible consequences. She hurried to the database to investigate. Sure enough, she found that near the location where the horse was attacked, there was indeed a prisoner named Miller, who died during Resurrection Day, and didn't appear on the list of resurrected people. At this point, Dana was almost certain that Miller was the one who attacked the horse. She drove to the cottage where Miller had lived. Before his death, however, contrary to Dana's expectation, after a thorough inspection, she didn't find Miller. The next second, Dana heard an abnormal sound behind her. She dodged sideways and narrowly escaped an axe attack. The attacker was none other than Miller. Seeing that this guy actually showed up on his own initiative, Dana immediately pounced on him. Although Miller had come back from the dead, he didn't become as powerful as Dana had guessed. He still seemed to be an ordinary person. It didn't take long before he was subdued by Dana. During their struggle, Miller's arm was caught in a trap. Watching him struggle, Dana realized that his strength was still ordinary. Unlike what she had predicted, it was clear that Miller wasn't the one who attacked the horse. Although he wasn't the target Dana was looking for, Miller was still a criminal who had hidden without reporting. So Dana took him back to the police station. With the current clues broken, Dana had to start the investigation from scratch. On this day, while she was out investigating, she met her sister Emma, who had been out of contact for more than a month. On the way, the other person looked a bit disheveled at this time, as if something had happened. But when Dana asked, Emma was unwilling to say anything. At this time, Dana was busy investigating the attacker, and seeing that her sister was unwilling to say more, she didn't continue to question. Not far from the crime scene, Dana noticed a car parked by the roadside. At this moment, Dana recalled some clues again. She remembered that there were some tire tracks at the crime scene at that time. After careful thought, they seemed to be from a pickup truck, and this passing vehicle happened to be a pickup truck too. Dana felt that things seemed a bit too coincidental, so she decided to stop the car and go forward to check. Just at this moment, the owner of the pickup truck hurried over as if worried about something. This made Dana even more certain that the other party knew something, so she asked the couple whether they had seen the murdered horse, but the two kept hesitating. While they were talking, a strange noise came from the warehouse. Almost at the same time, the couple's expressions immediately became serious. Dana noticed this and concluded that there must be a secret in the warehouse, so she forced her way into the warehouse to investigate regardless of the couple's obstruction. Sure enough, she found many teeth here like those at the previous crime scene. It seemed that the murderer was hiding in this warehouse. Dana searched around, not noticing a terrifying figure above the warehouse staring at her. At this moment, the figure suddenly fell to the ground. Attracted by the sound, Dana found it was an old woman, but at this moment, she seemed to be in some kind of madness, constantly pulling out her newly grown teeth. Seeing that things had been exposed, the couple no longer hid anything. It turned out that this old woman was the woman's mother. She claimed that her mother was very kind and hoped Dana would show mercy. However, the next second, seeing the old woman's such brutal behavior, Dana understood that the other party had undergone a terrible mutation, and seemed to have lost her sanity. So Dana didn't hesitate at all and took out her service pistol. However, her sister Emma had somehow also come to the warehouse, picked up the sickle, and was preparing to deal with the old woman together with Dana. The next second, the old woman directly snatched the sickle and then pierced her abdomen. Watching her sister seriously injured and her life or death unknown, Dana hurriedly fired a shot, but the bullet hitting the old woman seemed to have no effect. The other party was still slowly approaching her. The old woman's eyes were filled with madness as she grabbed Dana by the neck. At the critical moment, another accident happened. It was none other than the seriously injured Emma who made a move. Dana noticed that her sister's wound was healing at an extremely fast speed. She realized that her sister was also a resurrected person. Dana was filled with shock because neither she nor her father knew anything about it, when exactly Emma had died. But now, Dana didn't have time to ask more questions, because the colleagues from the police station would arrive soon. Involving Emma in this case would undoubtedly make things more troublesome, so the two sisters got their story straight, and attributed the credit for dealing with the old woman to Dana. Not long after, the police took the old lady's body to the control center. After investigation, it was learned that the old lady was named Arlene and was 82 years old. Even if she had come back from the dead, she shouldn't have such abnormal strength, so Rami decided to conduct an autopsy on the body. However, what he didn't expect was that even though half of the old woman's head had been cut off, her abnormal recovery ability could still keep her alive, even fully restoring the damaged head. When Rami finished preparing the autopsy tools, he found that the body of the old woman Arlene had disappeared. The sheriff beside him was equally shocked. They looked at the guard's body and realized something was wrong. The sheriff immediately ordered the surrounding area to be sealed off, and Arlene to be arrested as quickly as possible. At the same time, after handling the police station's affairs, Dana found her sister Emma to ask about the circumstances of her death. However, her sister's answer was beyond her expectation. Emma said she also couldn't remember what happened. When she woke up, she was by the water. The memory of that period seemed to have been erased. Dana didn't believe such a thing. Just as she was about to continue asking, she accidentally ran into the resurrected old woman Arlene. With previous experience, Dana didn't rush forward this time, so she led everyone to retreat. But they happened to run into the sheriff and his party who had come. Dana wanted to tell her father not to be impulsive, but the other party didn't have time to listen to her, and hurriedly led the team to chase Arlene. In that short moment, the old woman had already reached the nursery and taken a baby hostage. The sheriff and others didn't dare to act rashly, and the old woman fled with her baby. The other party was extremely agile. Unlike an 80-year-old man, before the sheriff and others could react, the old woman had already disappeared. Fortunately, with the babies crying as a guide, the sheriff and others didn't lose their target. They chased all the way to the underground parking lot, thinking they had finally caught up with Arlene, only to find that they had chased the wrong target. The person holding the child in front of them wasn't the old woman, but a man. Upon inquiry, they learned that his name was Brian. The sheriff suspected that this man was in cahoots with the old woman, so he pressed Brian to tell Arlene's location. Brian never showed the slightest sign of panic. Instead of answering the sheriff's questions, he kept saying some inexplicable things.
The gates of hell have opened.
The sheriff and others didn't make things difficult for this lunatic, but Arlene slipped away from everyone's sight. After this incident, the sheriff concluded that all resurrected people were dangerous factors. He suggested that the mayor activate the emergency plan to implement centralized management of all resurrected people, and dispatch more police forces to search for hidden resurrected people. However, for some reason, the mayor still firmly opposed it until now. He said it was a huge expense and was unwilling to spend money on it. But the sheriff had a vague feeling that things were not that simple. However, since the mayor didn't agree, the sheriff could do nothing but send more people to continue searching for Arlene to prevent new accidents. On the other side, Dana went to her sister Emma's residence to continue the unfinished conversation from before, but found a bag of contraband in her sister's room. This made Dana even more confused. She never knew that Emma had developed a drug addiction. Dana couldn't help but suspect that her sister's death might be related to these contraband items. At this moment, her sister Emma happened to return to the room. She noticed that the drugs had fallen into her sister's hands. Emma no longer hid it, and admitted that she had indeed used them before, but Emma said that since she came back to life, those drugs no longer had any effect on her. Now she has gotten rid of her drug addiction. Dana didn't believe such a statement. Moreover, apart from her sister's use of contraband, what she was more concerned about was where Emma had gotten such a large quantity. Based on Dana's experience as a police officer, such a large quantity was definitely valuable. Emma couldn't afford it, but she still refused to reveal anything. Obviously, the origin of these contraband items wasn't simple. Seeing that her sister was unwilling to admit it, Dana didn't continue to press. After all, the most important thing now was to find out the cause of her sister's death. Under Dana's constant questioning, Emma vaguely recalled some details. The day she was killed was her mother's death anniversary. Emma went alone to the place where her mother had the car accident. Perhaps recalling the tragedy back then, Emma couldn't help but take out some contraband again, and then lost consciousness. When she woke up again, she was lying in the water under a bridge, unable to remember what had happened in between. Listening to her sister's account, Dana also had no clue. Moreover, she had a vague feeling that her sister seemed to be hiding something. However, since the other party didn't want to tell Dana, her questioning would lead to nothing, so Dana decided to investigate by herself, to prevent her sister from having another accident. Dana kept Emma by her side. Even when going to work, she made her sister stay close at all times. But Emma didn't intend to be confined like this, so she slipped out of the police station while Dana wasn't paying attention. By the time Dana noticed, Emma was already nowhere to be seen, and her car had been driven away by Emma. Dana really had no way to deal with this sister. Thinking of her sister's recovery ability, Dana just let her leave. Later, she learned from her colleagues that obtaining such a large amount of contraband drugs could never be done through normal purchases. Her colleagues provided Dana with a file of drug addicts and the police's records. Maybe by investigating these drug addicts, she could find out the origin of Emma's contraband. After getting the file, Dana set out to find the people listed in it. During this time, because her car had been driven away by her sister, she had to borrow one from a colleague. In the end, only Rami agreed, but he requested to go along. Thus, the two set out to investigate together. At the same time, Emma was lost in thought in a bar. She had indeed hidden something from Dana before. In fact, when Emma woke up, there was a ring in her mouth. The owner of the ring was her college teacher, Aaron. Emma was so familiar with it, because she had maintained a secret improper relationship with teacher Aaron during her school days. Later, because Aaron chose to return to his family, Emma had to end this teacher-student relationship. However, Emma always couldn't forget Aaron. Now that she found her death might be related to Aaron, her first reaction was to protect him, which is why she hid it from her sister. As Emma kept recalling, she suddenly remembered some more memories from the day of the incident. In fact, Emma didn't go to the incident site alone that day. She had a date with Aaron. Thinking of this, she became more certain that what happened to her was related to Aaron. Therefore, she came to confront Aaron. However, after the two met, Aaron denied all the accusations. He claimed that he didn't keep the appointment that day, and the ring had been worn on his hand without being lost, so the ring in Emma's hand was definitely not his. At the same time, Rami, who followed Dana to investigate, also learned a lot about Emma on the way. 2 years ago, Emma drove out with her mother and Dana. However, due to her own carelessness, a serious car accident occurred. Her mother unfortunately died. This incident made Emma feel guilty all the time, and perhaps it was because of this that she developed a drug addiction, and since then, Emma has been trying to avoid contact with Dana and others. That's why Dana and others didn't find out about it until long after the incident. During their conversation, Dana noticed a familiar figure on the list of drug addicts. This person was Emma's roommate. Dana suspected if she had lured her sister into taking drugs. She took Rami to investigate. The scene returns to Emma. Again, she failed to get clues from Professor Aaron, and she was already depressed and irritable. Then Emma heard someone commenting on the resurrected in the bar. The person thought that all the resurrected should be killed again, because they should have died. Emma suddenly flew into a rage and was ready to teach this guy a good lesson. However, Emma really overestimated her strength and was beaten up by the man. If it weren't for the resurrected's extremely strong recovery ability, Emma would probably have been beaten to death. A young man named Roddy took the initiative to step forward and saved Emma. Through conversation, it was learned that Roddy was also a resurrected person. On the other side, Dana had already found the residence of Emma's roommate. The roommate was obviously a little surprised to see Dana break in. Dana asked if she had lured her sister into drug addiction, and kept providing her with contraband drugs. Under Dana's questioning, the roommate insisted that she had not provided contraband to Emma. Then she revealed the real source of Emma's contraband. It turned out that Emma had stolen them from the home of a local gypsy millionaire. When she heard that the person who was stolen from was named Andrew, Dana's expression became more complicated, because she knew this guy. Andrew was Dana's high school classmate. For a long time, Andrew had been a well-known delinquent, so it was quite reasonable for him to have a large amount of contraband at home. Dana even suspected that her sister's death was probably related to Andrew. After all, this guy was vengeful, so Dana went to visit Andrew's residence. From Andrew's mother, Dana learned that her sister had indeed been here and stolen something, but the old lady wasn't sure what exactly it was. On the other side, after Rami went back, he continued to study the resurrected. Although he never slacked off for a moment, the research made no progress. Rami once sampled and studied all plants and water sources within 9 kilometers around the town, but found nothing. However, he made a new breakthrough in the research on Arlene's brain tissue. To verify his idea, he went to Arlene's residence again for a more in-depth investigation. For safety reasons, he also invited the sheriff to go with him. During the investigation, Rami noticed that the relationship between Arlene's son-in-law and the old lady wasn't as harmonious as it seemed on the surface. Then he found that the room where the old lady lived seemed to have traces of binding and struggling. If there were no accidents, the old lady was probably abused during her lifetime, which matched Rami's previous guess. After returning to the police station, Rami told the sheriff that highly toxic cyanide was found in Arlene's body, and perhaps it was this incident that caused her to lose control. The scene shifts again. Emma followed Roddy, who was also a resurrected person, to his residence. During their chat, Emma learned the cause of Roddy's death. It turned out that he cut his palm with a knife while cutting fruit, but Roddy didn't take it seriously and only bandaged it simply. Unexpectedly, the wound became infected in the end, and he died of infection only 7 days later. When Emma saw Roddy's hand, she realized that the fatal wounds of the resurrected before their death couldn't be recovered, but there were no wounds on her body. That is to say, she couldn't have died from jumping off a bridge, because there were no traces of falls on her body. The next day, because Arlene killed her own daughter, the son-in-law held a funeral for his wife in the church. During this time, the sheriff and others also came to the scene, but in the middle of the funeral, the missing Arlene appeared in the church. Thinking that the other party might go crazy and lose control again, the sheriff immediately fired. Like before, the bullets had no effect on her. However, the hit Arlene didn't fly into a rage. It seemed that all she could see was her daughter lying in the coffin. She staggered to the body and stared at her daughter for a long time. For a moment, the sheriff didn't know what to do. At this moment, the man named Brian appeared in the church. He kept chanting something and was sprinkling holy water with his hands, as if trying to exorcise Arlene. However, the sheriff noticed that the smell of the holy water was not right. It was actually gasoline. Then Brian threw a lighter, setting Arlene and her daughter's body on fire together. The fire immediately engulfed them all, yet even when burned to a crisp, Arlene still didn't die. She was recovering at an astonishing rate. Arlene's case shocked the higher-ups, and the governor came to the police station. In person, the sheriff had been advocating for strict centralized management of the resurrected, but for some reason, the mayor still firmly opposed it until now. After a heated argument, the two sides finally made a compromise. The governor allowed the sheriff to find the hidden resurrected, and keep them under close surveillance to prevent situations similar to Arlene's from occurring. Although it didn't fully follow the sheriff's wishes, this result was barely satisfactory. While everyone was busy with their hands full, Emma was leisurely watching a concert. The lead singer on stage was Roddy, who had saved her before. Relying on the resurrected's trait of rapid recovery, he had prepared some ingenious performances. The bizarre content caused the audience below to exclaim continuously. While Emma was immersed in Roddy's performance, Andrew and his brothers appeared behind her. They had found Emma's location through some means, and just as Andrew and the others were about to make a move, Roddy stepped in again to save Emma. Later, he used the fans in the audience to help Emma escape the pursuit. Not long after, Dana also arrived here. In fact, she had been following Andrew closely, which is why she was able to arrive in time. Dana subdued Andrew and the others, and immediately afterward, she found a bag of drugs on one of Andrew's brothers. Afterward, Dana arrested Andrew's brother on charges of drug trafficking. Back at the police station, Dana revealed her real purpose. She knew Andrew had 3 brothers, and all of them were tough characters, so she offered to release him on the condition that Andrew and the others would no longer trouble Emma. However, during the negotiation, Dana learned that they had never attacked Emma before, and had no idea that Emma had even died once. Thus, Andrew and the others were not the murderers who killed Emma. Even so, Dana's conditions remained unchanged, and in the end, the other party agreed to no longer trouble Emma. On the other side, Emma and Roddy went to the bridge where she had woken up. To find the truth about her death, she decided to recreate the process of her death. During this time, some fragmented memories flashed through Emma's mind. She remembered that a man named Brian had appeared on this bridge, and he might be the one who killed her. At this moment, Brian had just left the police station. Although his act of burning Arlene was very impulsive, he hadn't harmed anyone else, so the sheriff had no right to arrest Brian. After leaving the police station, Brian returned to his stronghold, where he had gathered a large number of followers. This lunatic kept talking about some holy war, and was clearly plotting something extremely terrifying. On the other side, Dana found Emma's hiding place through unremitting efforts, and learned about the relationship between Emma and Professor Aaron by checking her phone to divert Dana's excessive attention from this matter. Emma told Dana that she remembered having seen a man named Brian on the bridge before. Although most of her memories are still very vague now, Emma is sure that that person is the man who set Arlene on fire with gasoline in the TV news. Upon hearing this news, Dana didn't have time to pursue the matter of Emma and Aaron, and immediately went to investigate Brian. It wasn't long before Dana arrived at Brian's stronghold, where she found the fanatical believers who had been brainwashed by Brian. Looking at the dense crowd, Dana knew she couldn't act rashly, so she questioned Brian using her identity as a police officer. He was very cooperative, and admitted that he had indeed seen Emma on the bridge that day, but Brian claimed he was just passing by, and knew nothing about what happened afterward. After speaking, he ignored Dana and left directly. Dana could do nothing about it. After all, she had no concrete evidence, and couldn't take him back to the police station for interrogation. Dana could only return to the police station first. At the same time, the sheriff launched a campaign for the registration of resurrected people's identities. He ordered that special labels be attached to all resurrected people's documents, so that ordinary people could easily identify them. This move caused a huge response. Although it did facilitate the management of the resurrected, many people, who had originally been hostile to the resurrected, could now easily identify these targets, and thus adopted various ways to boycott the resurrected. Many shops openly posted signs saying resurrected people are prohibited from entering. Seeing this situation, more and more resurrected people were unwilling to disclose their identities, but they couldn't hide from the police investigation, and were finally caught one by one. The identity of one of them surprised the sheriff the most. She turned out to be the mayor's wife. Seeing this, the sheriff finally understood why the mayor had insisted on opposing his suggestion of strict control over the resurrected. But now the situation has changed. Even though she is the mayor's wife, the sheriff wouldn't give her special treatment, and insisted on disclosing that the mayor's wife is a resurrected person. Although this move would arouse the mayor's dissatisfaction, the sheriff seemed not to care at all. On the other side, Dana was conducting an in-depth investigation into Brian. To her surprise, Brian didn't seem to be lying. However, Dana found an abandoned car near the bridge, where her sister had woken up, and found a parking ticket in the car. Following this clue, she found the owner's information, and discovered that the owner of the car was actually Professor Aaron's wife. Dana couldn't help but feel confused. From what she knew, Aaron's wife was suffering from cancer, in very poor health, and hardly traveled far. Why would her car be abandoned near the bridge? It clearly didn't make sense. For this reason, Dana decided to investigate further. As she kept investigating, her sister Emma regained some memories. Emma remembered that someone had attacked her on the bridge. She clearly recalled that the person wore a ring on his hand, which seemed to be the one she had in her mouth when she woke up. But Aaron's ring was still on his hand, so Emma guessed that Aaron's ring might be a fake, so she went to a local shop specializing in custom replicas. Upon inquiry, she learned that someone had customized an identical ring here. After Emma pressed, the shop owner revealed the customer's email address, which was the email address of Professor Aaron's teaching assistant. This made Emma more convinced that her death was related to Aaron. However, now, Aaron seemed to be being blackmailed by a mysterious person, which made him very angry. After a long silence, he seemed to make a certain decision. Not long after, Dana suddenly received a message from Aaron, who invited her to go somewhere, saying he would tell Dana everything he knew there. Upon seeing this message, Dana ignored her original date with Rami, and asked him to drive to that forest. At the same time, Emma was almost certain that Aaron was the one who killed her. For this, she cut off her hair, swore to cut ties with the past, then got ready and set out to seek revenge on Aaron. The scene returns to Aaron again. By now, he had arrived at the location agreed in the text message. However, to his surprise, it was Emma who arrived first. Under her constant questioning, Aaron claimed that he had indeed kidnapped Emma from the bridge, but he didn't hurt her. Before Aaron could finish speaking, an accident suddenly happened.
You were special. No,
After a moment, Dana also arrived at the forest, looking at Aaron's body. She was shocked. Before Dana could react, the murderer hiding in the dark launched another attack. This time, the bullet pierced through Dana's body and shot into Emma's. With the resurrected super strong recovery ability, Emma wasn't affected. While Dana was shot and fell to the ground, Emma hurriedly took out her sister's service pistol and then shot in the direction of the gunfire. Vaguely, she saw the mysterious killer's right shoulder being hit, and then the other party quickly fled the scene. Hearing the gunshots breaking out here, Rami, who was staying outside, also hurried over to check. At this time, Dana was already in a daze. Before falling unconscious, she used her last strength to urge Rami not to reveal the news that Emma was at the scene. She didn't want her sister to be involved. Once Emma's identity as a resurrected person was exposed, it might cause greater disputes. Then Dana fell into a coma. Rami and others hurriedly sent her to the hospital. Fortunately, the rescue was timely, and the bullet didn't damage the internal organs, thus saving Dana's life. However, due to internal bleeding caused by the trauma and other reasons, Dana would remain in a coma for a period of time afterward. Not long after, the old father, who was the sheriff, also came to the hospital. Learning that his daughter's life wasn't in danger for the time being, he breathed a little easier. The sheriff wouldn't let the murderer who hurt Dana go. He ordered to find out the identity of the murderer quickly. However, the on-site investigation fell into a deadlock, because the bullets that hit Dana and Aaron had both penetrated the bodies, leaving no shrapnel marks inside, and the police failed to find the bullets left by the gunman. The difficulty of the investigation doubled. Moreover, during the subsequent questioning, Rami kept his promise with Dana and concealed the truth that Emma was present. At this time, Dana was unconscious, and Emma couldn't explain the situation at the scene, so the case was completely at a standstill. The sheriff was burning with anxiety, and eagerly wanted to find the murderer to avenge his daughter. Just when he was in a mess, the mayor came to confront him, coming for the matter of his own wife. At this time, the sheriff had no intention of dealing with the mayor's trivial matters, so he directly dismissed him. Constrained by the superior's order, the mayor knew he couldn't do anything to the other party, but obviously, he wouldn't let it go so easily. The scene shifts to Emma. The sheriff always thought no bullet traces were left at the scene, but in fact, one bullet remained in Emma's body. She knew well that the bullet was the key to solving the case, so she decided to find someone to help take it out. But she didn't want to involve Roddy, who had saved her many times, so Emma found her roommate. However, the other person wasn't a professional doctor, and there was no anesthetic here. She could only use the most primitive method to take the bullet out of Emma's body. Fortunately, Emma was a resurrected person, and such a wound could heal in an instant. But it didn't end after taking out the bullet. She had to find a way to hand over this bullet to the other party without being discovered by the police. After thinking for a long time, Emma sneaked into the mortuary and recoated the cleaned bullet with Aaron's skin tissue. Immediately after, She placed the bullet with Aaron's bloodstain in a prominent position at the crime scene. After that, as long as the police found it, Emma's goal would be achieved. It wasn't long before the police found that bloodstained bullet. While the police were fully investigating the shooting, the research team was also not idle. They kept researching the bodies of the resurrected, and the female assistant Morel carried out a series of inhumane experiments on the resurrected behind Rami's back. To her surprise, she discovered a way to inhibit the resurrected's recovery ability. She found that as long as a certain type of snake venom was injected into the resurrected, it could prevent their wounds from healing quickly. This discovery made the sheriff very satisfied. Rami learned that his assistant had conducted such experiments behind his back, and expressed strong opposition. However, Rami didn't notice the superior's attitude towards these experiments. They didn't care about the human rights of the resurrected. Those guys just wanted to find a way to deal with the resurrected quickly. So, after Rami expressed strong opposition, the superiors suspended his position, and instead let Morel take full charge of the resurrected project. Rami really couldn't accept such a result. Probably the only good news was that Dana in the hospital woke up from her coma. As long as they could learn about the situation that night from Dana, they would probably catch the murderer. However, before they could question Dana, the police received a message. Someone claimed to have seen a suspicious person in the forest on the night Dana was attacked. The clue provider was an old man. According to him, that night when he was walking his dog, and passing by the outskirts of the forest, he noticed a man in a hurry wearing a helmet, who was very likely the murderer who attacked Dana. Then the old man also mentioned that the other party's flashlight was extremely bright and by no means a civilian item. The sheriff took out his own flashlight, and the old man said that this was the kind of light. Upon hearing this description, the sheriff realized that the murderer was most likely someone from the police station. This would explain why the police found no bullets at the scene. They were probably hidden by an insider. With this thought, the case suddenly became clear. The sheriff ordered the confiscation of all police officers' firearms for ballistic testing. With the bullet found earlier, they soon confirmed that the bullet came from Officer McGray's service gun. When everyone arrested him, a shocking scene was discovered. A large number of human organs were found in the trunk of McGray's police car. As a police officer, he was actually smuggling organs. The scene shifts to Brian again. At this time, he seems to be preparing a ceremony in his stronghold. New members are asked to touch something. After a moment, a mysterious mark is left on each of their hands. This is the symbol of Brian and his group. It is unknown whether this mysterious ceremony is related to those resurrected people. With McGray's arrest, the sheriff almost concluded that McGray was the murderer who hurt his daughter. At this moment, Dana said that McGray wasn't the mysterious man that night, because she remembered that the mysterious person was injured in the right arm by Emma. While McGray had no wounds on his arm, it was very likely that he was framed. However, even so, with conclusive evidence of his crime of smuggling organs, the police had to detain McGray, and then start investigating the industrial chain of organ smuggling. As the investigation deepened, the police found that this organ smuggling chain was different from previous ones. They were actually smuggling organs of the resurrected. The resurrected have extremely strong recovery abilities. Once caught by malicious people, they become their cash cows. After a period of time, their cut-off organs can regenerate, and the huge profits even surpass drug smuggling. Even police officers were tempted by the profits, and took risks to participate in organ transportation. McGray was one of them. The police realized the huge interest chain behind it, and decided to crack down severely on the smuggling of resurrected people's organs. To this end, adhering to the principle of arresting 1,000 suspects, rather than letting one slip through, they arrested a large number of suspicious people. Among them was Roddy, who had once saved Emma. The police's actions angered the local gang, especially Czech, Andrew's underling, because those industries were built up by him. In the face of the police crackdown, Czech launched retaliatory actions. Not long after, Rami, entrusted by Dana to look after her son, found Dana's house in a mess, as if it had been robbed. Subsequently, Rami also found that Dana's son, her sister Emma, and a resurrected girl adopted by Dana had all disappeared. Rami realized something was wrong. He saw a message left by the culprit on the wall. They had all been kidnapped by Czech. After Dana learned this news, even she couldn't stay calm. Despite her physical weakness, Dana forcibly pulled out the 4-tube, wanting to go to Czech's hideout to rescue them. But she was really too weak now. She even fell to the ground before walking out of the ward. The medical staff hurried forward to help her up, and persuaded Dana not to be impulsive. However, Dana wouldn't listen, so the medical staff had to inject her with a sedative to calm her down. On the other side, Emma and the children were taken to Czech's hideout, which was also the place where organ harvesting surgeries were performed. Looking at Emma, Czech couldn't help feeling excited. He could not only get revenge on the sheriff, but also found new sources incidentally. In this way, he could quickly carry out organ harvesting and smuggling. Thinking of this, Czech's eyes became even more fiery. On the other side, the sheriff also learned that Emma and others had been kidnapped. He interrogated McGray, pressing for Czech and others' hiding place. However, no matter how the sheriff interrogated, McGray always insisted he knew nothing. In fact, he was just a small fry in Czech's huge industrial chain, and had no right to know where the organ factory was. Seeing that he couldn't get clues about Czech from McGray, the sheriff became more anxious. At this time, the sedative in the hospital gradually wore off, and Dana slowly woke up from her coma. At this moment, she saw Officer Ian appear in her ward. Dana knew him. He was her father's most trusted assistant and was in charge of this case. Dana told Ian that the Czech had kidnapped her family, hoping he could help gather people to launch a search and rescue. Although Ian agreed on the surface, Dana noticed that he had been distracted. As if worrying about something, Dana felt something was wrong. At this moment, Dana's phone suddenly rang, and it was actually Czech calling. The other party said that the sheriff had made them suffer heavy losses, and now they wanted to take revenge. If Dana still wanted to see her son, she had to help them engage in smuggling activities. Otherwise, they would sell her son's organs too. Czech provided a license plate number, seemingly assuming that Dana would help with the smuggling. Then Czech hung up the phone, not giving Dana any chance to ask more questions. But this time Czech was wrong in his expectation. Although Dana was very hesitant, there was something more important in her heart. Dana patted Ian hard on the shoulder, urging him to prepare a vehicle. She was going to deal with Czech. After Ian left, Dana called her father, the sheriff, asking him to intercept Czech's truck. Then Dana begged the nurse to give her a shot of adrenaline, to ensure she could engage in intense combat afterward. Although the nurse was reluctant, she agreed to Dana's request after learning the situation. Under the effect of adrenaline, Dana couldn't feel the pain in her body. She prepared to set out to save people. At this moment, Officer Ian returned to the ward, but Dana froze in place instantly, because she had unintentionally patted Ian. The wound on his right arm split open, and blood had soaked through his police uniform by now. Seeing such a coincidental scene, how could Dana not react? Ian was the mysterious killer who had tried to kill her that night. With his identity exposed, Ian stopped pretending. He closed the ward door behind him, intending to kill Dana, but Dana had already been injected with adrenaline, almost returning to her peak state and feeling no pain. In just a moment, Ian was taken down by Dana. After dealing with Ian, Dana drove Ian's police car to intercept Czech's truck. Dana sped all the way and finally caught up with the truck, only to find that what was hidden in the truck wasn't organs, but the resurrected people kidnapped by Czech. By interrogating the truck driver, Dana learned Czech's specific location. She set out again and told her father the news. At this moment, in Czech's base, Emma had somehow escaped and was now rampaging through the base, killing wildly. When Dana arrived, the base was full of bodies. She didn't know it was her sister who did this. Dana kept searching and found her tied-up son in the innermost room. But just as Dana was about to step forward to save her son, Czech rushed out from the corner. Obviously, this was a trap. By this time, the adrenaline had worn off. Dana was no match for Czech. Just as Dana was about to be killed by him, a figure burst into the room. It was Emma. She grabbed Czech's neck from behind, trying to strangle him directly, but due to the difference between men and women and the huge size gap, Czech exerted all his strength to break free and even broke her arm. Such a wound would have left an ordinary person unable to fight, but for the resurrected Emma, it had no effect on her except for some pain. Even the protruding bone from her broken arm was used as a weapon by Emma. Czech, having underestimated Emma, was pierced through the body by her with the bone. After dealing with Czech, Emma came to check on Dana. She already had gunshot wounds, and now with several stab wounds, she was dying. Suddenly, a light cluster emerged from the water in the forest outside. Then a glowing creature appeared in front of humans. The resurrected girl adopted by Dana touched the mysterious creature, and the next second, she turned into a cluster of light. Just at this moment, Rami arrived at the scene, and was equally shocked to see the mysterious monster in the girl's situation. On the other side, Dana's body also began to emit the same light as the mysterious creature. Unlike the girl, who turned into light and disappeared, Dana was still in Emma's arms, and her wounds had healed. Dana believed that it was her sister's special ability that saved her. Emma seemed very weak. Obviously, the ability to fully heal someone wasn't without cost. Dana understood how important Emma's ability was, so she decided to keep it a secret from anyone outside. So she arranged for Rami to take Emma away and let her sister hide temporarily. But things were not as simple as Dana thought, because this time there were surveillance cameras in the base. Through the on-site surveillance footage, the police found that before Dana entered, a mysterious woman had eliminated everyone. The sheriff recognized that it was his own daughter, and now he realized that Emma was also a resurrected person. The sheriff hurried to find Dana and found that his daughter had fully recovered. He was shocked again. Seeing that things were exposed, Dana told her father that her sister had become a resurrected person, and had the ability to fully heal others. This news made the sheriff's heart very complicated. However, before he could ask further, the mayor hurried over. The other party looked angry. It turned out that not long ago, the governor learned from somewhere that Emma had killed more than a dozen gangsters, and sent the military to take control of all resurrected people. Faced with the strong intervention of the military, all resurrected people fell into panic. As the trigger of the incident, Emma was still extremely weak, perhaps due to overusing her abilities. Before, she couldn't even heal her wounds. To get revenge on the sheriff's family, the mayor volunteered to help the military search for the missing Emma. It wasn't long before the military locked onto Emma's location, and even the sheriff felt panic. On the other side, Rami made breakthrough progress in his research. He found an unknown substance in the town's stream that could promote the regeneration of resurrected cells. He had Emma take a sample, and Emma's body quickly recovered in a moment. This way, she might have a chance to escape the pursuit. However, Emma's family was already under strict military surveillance, and unable to contact the outside world. They were unwilling to be trapped in the house like this, so the father and daughter planned an operation. Then, the sound of their quarrel came from the house, followed by the sound of hitting, as if the father and daughter had a physical conflict. Due to the argument, the guards outside really took the bait and entered the room to check, only to be controlled by the father and daughter. Then they took down another soldier and fled here. However, the two didn't go to find Emma. Instead, they planned to first uncover the truth of her murder, and they decided to start with Ian. Through police records, the sheriff found that on the night of Emma's mother's death anniversary, Ian had actually gone to the crematorium, which wasn't part of his investigation duties. The sheriff was sure there must be something fishy going on, so the father and daughter decided to investigate the crematorium first. Not long after, they arrived at the crematorium. By asking the staff, they learned that Ian had indeed been there that night, and had brought an unidentified body. Using his identity as the deputy sheriff, he demanded to cremate it. The administrator didn't dare to disobey the order and had to cremate the body. At this moment, cries for help came from the incinerator. The body had actually come back to life. The administrator couldn't believe such an absurd thing, but there was another person who could testify, which was the internet celebrity Melissa, who was filming here. After hearing that person's name, Dana froze instantly, because the other person was her best friend, and her profession wasn't an internet celebrity, nor did she film online short dramas. Obviously, there was something else going on here. She immediately went to Melissa's residence. Upon inquiry, it was learned that the other person was indeed not going to film a short drama. The reason she went to the crematorium was that she found Ian taking a corpse there to be cremated. Out of curiosity, she sneaked after him. To enter openly, she made up the excuse of filming a short drama. As for the person who later escaped from the incinerator, Melissa hid him deep in the forest, to prevent Ian from finding out he was still alive. Moreover, according to Melissa, the other person seemed to know a lot about the resurrected. Upon hearing this, Dana asked Melissa to take her to inquire. Thus, the two set off together for the forest. At the same time, Rami took Emma to the source of the town stream. He speculated that only here could Emma's body regain vitality. After Emma entered the stream, she felt a mysterious force constantly nourishing her body, making her feel very comfortable. Emma immersed herself in the stream, feeling the nourishment of that mysterious force. It was at this moment that many memory fragments reappeared in her mind. Emma finally remembered that this was where she died. She was just about to tell Rami this discovery, when she noticed a terrifying figure standing on the shore, and Rami had already been knocked unconscious by them. On the other side, Dana, led by Melissa, arrived at the depths of the forest. However, to Dana's surprise, the first person she saw was her sister Emma. Through communication, she learned that the terrifying figure was the resurrected person Melissa had mentioned. Seeing Emma safe and sound, Dana finally breathed a sigh of relief. Later, she met Jesse, the resurrected person saved by Melissa. He looked a bit ferocious because of burns. From Jesse, she learned that the person who killed Emma was the same one who killed Jesse. Meanwhile, in the town, Brian reached the final moment. He led those brainwashed believers, formed an armed force called the Holy War Organization, and even planned to capture all resurrected people and kill them. Turning to Dana's side, the two brought up Jesse's missing daughter, Rose. 2 years ago, Rose suddenly went missing while waiting at the station. When Jesse came to the police station to report the case, it was Dana who received him, and the two got to know each other this way. Later, through investigation, Dana found that Rose had bought a train ticket to leave the town. but hadn't taken it, so she inferred that Rose was very likely kidnapped. After that, she followed the clues to the bus station heading to the railway station to search. She found a piece of Rose's clothing debris here, which confirmed that Rose had indeed met with misfortune. To investigate the truth behind the girl's disappearance, Dana went to Rose's residence to look for clues. Accidentally, she saw a necklace with a bear claw pattern, and many letters signed Bear. Dana suspected that Rose's disappearance was very likely related to this person called Bear. At this moment, Dana's colleague found out that Jesse's family were all Indians, and as early as a year ago, Jesse had transferred all his land ownership to Rose. Dana thus suspected that the murderer might be after the land, because according to local laws, if Indians leave their land, settle elsewhere for a long time, or disappear, the land will become unowned property, and all be reclaimed for re-auction. What's very coincidental is that this person with the pen name Bear also started contacting Rose from a year ago. Thinking of this, Dana became more suspicious that Bear was behind all this. However, because the case involved Indians, it might trigger racial disputes, so the sheriff had always wanted to calm things down, and didn't take the case seriously. He even concluded that Rose was hidden by Jesse, because someone had seen the father and daughter quarreling in public before. Faced with her father's such unreliable behavior, Dana had to investigate by herself. However, she didn't know who Bear was, until she saw a poster of Brian, who was wearing a string of bear claw necklaces, exactly the same as the one she had seen in Rose's room. Dana couldn't help suspecting that this guy was very likely Bear, so she went straight to find Brian. Faced with Dana's questioning, Brian admitted that he was that Bear. However, Brian insisted that he was just Rose's pen pal and knew nothing else. Moreover, during the days when Rose was missing, he was on vacation outside and had no chance to do it. Looking at the other's mocking expression, Dana knew Brian must be lying. However, before she could press further, a notification from her father came through Dana's walkie-talkie. They claimed to have caught the murderer. Dana hurried to meet up, only to find her father and Ian walking out of Jesse's residence, with Ian holding a half-burned piece of clothing in his hand. Dana's father, and they claimed that they had found incompletely burned clothes of Rose in Jesse's basement, thus concluding that everything was staged by Jesse himself. Dana didn't believe that Jesse would harm his own daughter, so she later secretly found Jesse, who told Dana that he had been wronged. However, Dana could do nothing. The only thing she could do was unlock Jesse's handcuffs, and the rest was up to him. Seeing this situation, Jesse didn't say anything more. Not long after, Dana heard that Jesse had escaped, and everyone from the police station went out to chase him. Whether by fate or otherwise, Dana was the first to find Jesse. The two didn't say much, as if they had never met, and Dana just let Jesse leave in front of her. Over the next 2 years, Jesse never gave up on this case, and during this period, he met his close friend Melissa, who was also investigating Rose's case. It turned out that Melissa and Rose were a couple. Back then, the reason Rose booked the train ticket was that she wanted to elope with Melissa, but such a thing happened. Melissa has always thought that she harmed Rose. Through their unremitting efforts, they found that the one who framed Jesse back then was likely Officer Ian, because since Jesse's incident, Ian had received a large sum of money. He not only paid for his mother's medical expenses, but also had a lot left over, so they told Jesse this news. So he secretly followed Ian, but was discovered by Ian and killed by him. He was then transported to the mortuary. Fortunately, the mysterious force woke him up, allowing him to escape from the incinerator. After hearing Jesse's account, everyone realized that there was a mastermind behind Ian manipulating everything. At this moment, Emma said that she remembered some details of how she was killed back then. She remembered that the murderer had a special symbol on him, the same as Brian's Holy War organization. Dana couldn't help suspecting that Brian was the mastermind, because Dana learned that many years ago, Brian's father had tried to buy the land from Jesse but was rejected. This lunatic is very likely to do unimaginable things. However, now, Brian is surrounded by many brainwashed fanatical believers, and they must not rush in blindly. Dana plans to go back to apply for a warrant, and then arrest Brian in an official capacity. Until then, everyone will hold their positions. However, not long after Dana left, Jesse couldn't help sneaking into Brian's stronghold, ready to kill this guy. Just as he was about to act, Jesse spotted a mysterious light not far away. He followed the light to check and found a mysterious monster. It's obvious that Brian gathered a large number of believers by relying on this thing. The mysterious creature took the initiative to guide Jesse somewhere. Jesse followed the glowing creature hesitantly, all the way to an abandoned car. At this moment, he seemed to think of something and opened the car trunk. What came into view was indeed the body of his daughter Rose. This confirmed that Brian was the murderer. Jesse left the stronghold with his daughter's body, but when he returned, he found that Emma was missing again. It turned out that not long ago, Emma received a call from Roddy. He had escaped from military control somehow, and asked Emma to rescue him. Emma didn't hesitate much and agreed. At this point, Emma had arrived at the location mentioned in the call and saw Roddy. However, at this time, Emma was suddenly attacked. Before losing consciousness, she vaguely heard the sound of a walkie-talkie from Roddy. It was obviously a trap, but by this time, it was all too late. The film ends here. The film was released in June this year, as a fantasy horror film. Its setting isn't particularly original, the plot is quite mediocre, and the plot progresses very slowly, giving a sense of being dragging, whether it's because it was cut short or not. The ending is very abrupt. Today's video ends here. Thank you all for watching. Your likes, comments and follows are the best encouragement for us. See you in the next episode.